Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. It feels really nice to be back here again this week and just sit in front of the microphone and have these conversations with you. And today I just felt the urge to sit outside. It is so beautiful. The weather is screaming summer, and I felt a little bit under the weather this week. So I'm finally back out, and I just want to spend as much time outside as possible because I've been inside basically all week. And I feel like this could be a very cute setup for today because the topic of today really matches the environment I'm in right now. And I know I say this very often, but I genuinely mean it every single time. There is something very special to me about this space we have in the podcast because I think in a world where everything moves so fast, where everyone is constantly consuming, constantly scrolling, and constantly taking things in, it feels very grounding to have a place where we can slow down together just for a second and where we actually can reflect on what is happening inside us. And today's episode is one of those conversations that I think almost everyone needs right now. And especially this time of the year, because summer carries a very specific feeling. There's just something more soft about it. There's something more alive, more sensory, and people, they stay outside longer. The evenings feel slower. The air smells different. Music sounds different. You suddenly notice those small little moments more. But I also think summer can pass incredibly quickly without us fully realizing that we were never actually present inside it. And honestly, that thought that hit me really deeply recently because I had this moment where I thought, what a bummer it would be to reach the end of summer and realize you spent most of it distracted, that you spent the summer scrolling and consuming, documenting everything, replying or just watching other people, thinking about the next thing or the next plan, the next trip. Like you are just mentally somewhere else all the time without fully being inside your own life while your own life is happening. And I think so many of us are experiencing life through partial attention right now. Like our bodies are somewhere, but our minds are constantly elsewhere. And honestly, I don't even say that from judgment. I say it because I notice it in myself too. I notice the automatic reaching for the phone, the urge to fill every quiet moment immediately. Like, can you just catch yourself? Sometimes you wait in line and you pick up your phone. You walk somewhere, listen to a podcast, or you sit alone for 2 minutes and you just scroll. Even while watching a movie, people are half on their phones. And what is fascinating is how normalized this has become because we barely experience empty space anymore. And I think a lot of us don't even realize what that is doing to our nervous system or to our ability to actually experience our own lives deeply. Constant stimulation changes your relationship with presence, and it changes your relationship with boredom, with stillness, with attention, with yourself. And I think many people have slowly lost the ability to simply be with themselves without immediately reaching for input because the nervous system has become conditioned to that constant stimulation, to that constant engagement, constant consumption, constant interruption. And I do not think human beings were designed to live with this level of input all the time because if you really think about it, there are very few moments now where people are simply existing, where people are existing without consuming something, without watching something, without listening to something or replying to something, even documenting anything. Or I think a lot of us also try to optimize everything so that even rest has become consumption. And I think this creates a very subtle but important form of disconnection because when every quiet moment immediately gets filled, you stop hearing yourself clearly. I mean, like, you stop hearing your own thoughts, you stop hearing your own intuition, your own emotions, and it will also block your creativity. And over time, life can start feeling blurry, like you are moving through it quickly, but you're not fully touching it. And I think this is one of the reasons people feel so emotionally overstimulated right now. The nervous system never gets space to settle because there's always more input. There are always more noise, more information, more opinions, more stimulation, and eventually the body forgets how to tolerate stillness. And this is not because stillness is dangerous, but because it became unfamiliar, and the nervous system, it often experiences unfamiliarity as discomfort. And what makes me sad sometimes is imagining how many beautiful, ordinary moments people are missing while mentally being somewhere else. Like a sunset they barely looked at because they were scrolling, or a dinner with friends while half replying to messages, or walking through a warm evening while consuming somebody else's life instead of experiencing their own. People even document moments so much that they stop fully living them while they're happening. I really don't want that for myself. I don't want to reach September and feel like summer passed me while I was mentally elsewhere the entire time. I want to actually remember my life, not only photograph it. I want to feel it. I want to be inside of it. And the interesting thing is that presence is not only emotional, it is physiological too. Your nervous system changes depending on where your attention lives. And when attention becomes constantly fragmented, the body starts living in fragmentation too. It is half here, half somewhere else, always stimulated, and it never fully lands. And I think this is why so many people feel simultaneously overstimulated and disconnected at the same time. There is so much input, but very little actual presence. And I think one of the most powerful things we can do this summer is not necessarily becoming more productive. I know you want to optimize, and I know you want to self-improve, but I think it is simply relearning how to actually experience our lives again more fully, and that also requires to live it slower and more consciously, to actually sit outside without needing stimulation immediately, to take a walk without grabbing the phone every 5 seconds or even having the phone in your hands, and just letting boredom exist so you can soften instead of constantly escape your life. Because boredom is actually not empty. That is the fascinating part. Boredom is often the doorway back into creativity and clarity, reflection, intuition, and also just being present. But most people never stay there long enough. So they never get to experience that part, and they interrupt the moment before that quietness happens. So honestly, that is what I want this episode to become. I don't want to give you a lecture about phones. Like, I love my phone, and I don't want some dopamine detox performance. We're not performing here. I want this to be an invitation to come back to your own life right now. I want you to notice where your attention has been going and to notice how much stimulation your nervous system has normalized. I think I need to move around a little bit throughout this episode because the sun is constantly chasing me, and I love that. But I want to sit in the shadow. Well, the more I've been reflecting on this recently, the more I think one of the biggest changes happening to modern nervous systems is not even stress itself. But I think it is the complete loss of stillness, the loss of empty space, the loss of moments where nothing is happening. Because if you really observe modern life, most people move from one form of stimulation directly into another. You wake up and you check your phone. You listen to something while you're getting ready, and you're answering your messages while you're eating. You scroll while watching TV, and you listen to podcasts while walking. You consume content while you are cooking. So, see, you're always doing multiple things. You're not just focusing on one thing. And again, I don't say this from judgment. I do these things too. But I think it is important to notice how little space the nervous system now experiences without any input and without noise and without stimulation, without being distracted. And what is fascinating is that the nervous system, it adapts to whatever we repeatedly expose it to. So when we constantly train the brain to expect stimulation, stillness starts feeling uncomfortable. And not because stillness is bad, but the body is just no longer used to the stillness. And I'm super honest with you, I notice this in tiny moments all the time with myself, like standing in an elevator or waiting for my matcha, or even sitting in an Uber for 5 minutes, and almost immediately there's this impulse of checking something, reaching for something, or filling that space. And I don't even know what to reach for, but it's just this impulse. And it happens so automatically that I don't barely notice it. And I know people barely notice it. But those tiny moments, they matter, because every time the nervous system feels even a second of emptiness, we have trained ourselves to immediately interrupt it. And over time, the body, it starts losing tolerance for unoccupied space and for silence and for boredom, or simply existing without consuming anything. And I think this is one of the reasons people feel restless even when life technically slows down. There is also something happening neurologically here that I think is important to understand. Every notification and every scroll and every new piece of information that creates these tiny little dopamine responses in your brain, it creates tiny anticipation loops and tiny rewards. And the brain, it goes, what is next? What's else? What's new? What did someone post? Did anyone reply? Or what am I missing? And this just makes you very human inside this system designed to capture attention. But the nervous system, it pays a price for that constant fragmentation, because attention is energy. And when attention is constantly scattered, the nervous system starts feeling scattered too. It doesn't have any place to land. It is always partially stimulated and it is always partially anticipating. And I think many people are so overstimulated now that calm feels almost emotionally flat at first. Like the body, it mistakes peace for boredom or mistakes stillness for emptiness. And this is where I think something deeper starts happening psychologically too. Because when every quiet moment gets filled immediately, you stop encountering yourself, your own thoughts, your own emotions, your own reflections. And I honestly think many people no longer know how to simply be with themselves without stimulation and just softening the edge of that experience. And this is not because they are shallow, me, you are shallow, but we have normalized distractions so deeply. And what makes this kind of difficult is that modern distraction, it often looks productive, like educational podcasts. We have self-development content. Everything is for your self-development right now. Like, even when you reply to your friends, it's like, I don't know, or you watch helpful things. So you think, I'm learning, I'm staying informed, and I'm being productive. Meanwhile, your nervous system, it never fully exhales, it never settles, it never fully experiences uninterrupted presence. And I think one of the reasons people struggle so much with anxiety right now is not only because life is stressful, but it is because the nervous system never fully comes down from stimulation. There is always more input, even at night, even during rest. People fall asleep with sound. You wake up with sound. You walk with sound, and you even eat with sound. So the nervous system, it rarely gets the experience where true spaciousness is present. And what is interesting is that many people think boredom is a bad thing, that whenever you're bored, you should avoid it, and it feels quite comfortable. But boredom is often the nervous system recalibrating. It is the space before those deeper thought appears. It is the space before creativity appears and before reflection appears and before intuition becomes audible again. But most people never stay there long enough to reach that layer. I think many people no longer even know how to sit on a bench and exist for 10 minutes. And once you start noticing this, you also realize how much of modern life is just built around keeping your attention occupied at all times. But a nervous system that never pauses, it also struggles to hear itself clearly. And I think that's why so many people feel disconnected from their intuition and from their creativity and their emotions and their actual needs, because you don't hear the signals because you're always distracted. And my goal is not to become the perfectly disconnected person who never touches the phone again. That is not my goal. That is not realistic for me. And honestly, that is not even necessary. The goal for me is simply rebuilding the nervous system's tolerance for presence again. The tolerance for stillness and for slowness and for moments that are not immediately filled, because those moments are not empty. Those moments are where life actually starts becoming felt again. And I think maybe this is where the conversations might go a little bit deeper, because yes, phones are stimulating. Yes, apps are designed to capture your attention, but I actually do not think the deeper issue is technology itself. I think the deeper question is, why does stillness feel so uncomfortable right now? Why do so many people feel the need to immediately reach for stimulation the second life becomes quiet? Like, if you really start observing yourself honestly, you notice how automatic it is. You sit down for a second and suddenly you're grabbing your phone without even consciously deciding to. I think many people are not actually addicted to their phones. I think they are uncomfortable with what appears when the stimulation disappears, because silence has a way of revealing things. You notice your emotional state more clearly. You notice your exhaustion more clearly. You notice whether you actually feel fulfilled, connected, present, and happy. And I think constant distraction can become a very socially acceptable way to avoid fully encountering ourselves. Because if you really think about it, how many people can sit completely alone for 20 minutes without needing input? 20 minutes without scrolling. No music, no podcast, no TV, no texting, no stimulation. Just themselves. And again, this is not about becoming extreme. It is about noticing how quickly the nervous system now tries to escape unoccupied space. And what is interesting is that many people, they think they are relaxing while they are consuming constantly. The nervous system is still active internally. It is still processing. It is still stimulated. It is taking in information. And eventually, the body forgets what true mental spaciousness even feels like. I also think distraction has become a very normalized emotional regulation strategy. Do you feel uncomfortable? Let's scroll a little bit. Are you feeling anxious? Consume something. Are you lonely? Watch something. And if you feel uncertain, just stimulate yourself out of that feeling. And because these behaviors are so normalized, people rarely question them deeply. But what happens over time is that you lose intimacy with yourself because you are constantly interrupting the conversation before it fully begins. I've noticed this in myself as well. I'm not blaming anyone here. I've had moments where I just reach for my phone and then I stop myself for a second and I realized I actually felt emotionally uncomfortable underneath. And it made me realize how often stimulation is not about entertainment. It is regulation, or at least attempted regulation, because stimulation, it changes your internal state quickly. It distracts attention and it redirects emotions and it occupies awareness, which is why it can temporarily feel revealing. But the problem is, temporary distraction is not the same thing as true nervous system peace. And I think many people confuse the two, because real calm, it often feels quieter than stimulation. It feels less exciting, less intense, less dopamine driven. And when the nervous system becomes used to that constant input, true stillness can feel emotionally flat, or it even feels uncomfortable. And I think this is also why people struggle when they slow down during vacations, because when life becomes quieter, there's suddenly more room to feel, there's more room to notice, and there's more room to encounter yourself without constant interruption. And for many people, that is unfamiliar territory. But something that is very beautiful is underneath all the discomfort, there's something really important waiting for you. Creativity is waiting, insights, motion, clarity, intuition, rest and presence, and just a part of you that are harder to hear when your attention is constantly occupied. And some of the most meaningful moments in life are usually not happening while we're consuming something. They happen when we finally become present enough to actually notice our own lives. Just that conversation that fully lands. Or, wow, a quiet evening walk. And maybe a thought that changes your perspective, or a moment where you feel a bit more connected to yourself again. Those things, they usually appear in spaciousness and not so often in overstimulation. And I think that is why rebuilding your tolerance for stillness is so powerful, because you are not only reducing distraction, you are rebuilding your relationship with yourself. You're learning how to exist without constantly escaping your own inner world. And you're learning how to sit in silence long enough for life to start feeling real again. And this is also where neuroscience comes into this and becomes really fascinating, because presence is not only emotional, it is neurological too. Your brain actually needs periods of spaciousness in order to function well. And I think most people completely underestimate this, because modern culture often glorifies constant input, constant productivity, constant stimulation, constant optimization. But your brain was never designed to constantly consume without any pauses. It was designed for rhythm, for engagement and then recovery, for focus and then spaciousness, and for stimulation and then integration. And when those pauses just disappear, the nervous system starts becoming overloaded in ways people don't even realize. There is something in neuroscience called the default mode network. And very simply explained, it is a network in the brain that becomes active when you stop actively consuming or focusing outward. You know, when the mind just wanders a little, when you're walking or showering or daydreaming, looking out the car window, or just laying in the grass, when you are doing nothing for a moment. And what is really interesting is that this network is deeply connected to creativity, which means that some of the most important mental emotional processes, they happen when we stop constantly taking things in. And honestly, I think most people already know this intuitively, because where do your best ideas usually come from? I don't think they come when you aggressively force them to come. The best ideas, they come when you are taking a shower, or when you are on that walk, or while you're staring out your window while cooking, or just when you're laying in bed. And I think that is really beautiful, because intuition often needs spaciousness. But if every moment immediately gets filled up, the brain never fully enters those deeper reflective states. And I know for myself, some of my clearest thoughts, they have come during very ordinary moments. They come when I'm walking home slowly, or when I'm swimming, or when I'm sitting outside with no music on, or looking at the oceans whenever I'm having that in front of me. And even just drinking matcha quietly in the morning without immediately consuming something. And what is interesting is that those moments, they also feel much more emotional rich. They feel more alive. And I know that that is because the nervous system finally has room to land in the present moment. And I honestly think this is why people often feel disconnected from creativity or from intuition now, because there is always just too much noise and too much interruption and too much input competing for your attention. So if you feel overstimulated or just emotionally numb right now, I think it is because the nervous system is flooded with information, but it lacks digestion. And just like the body, it struggles when it constantly consumes without properly digesting. And wouldn't it be really sad if you reach the end of life having consumed so much that you barely fully inhabited your own moments while they were happening? Because life is actually made up of very, very small things, like a laugh at dinner, warm air on your skin, a conversation, or music playing while the windows are open, or just that. Like, I love that quiet walk home at night. And those moments, they need your attention, because attention is what makes life feel real. And I think the brain remembers life differently when we are actually present inside it, when we are not rushing through it or multitasking through it or half consuming something else while life is happening. And I think this is why summer feels so emotional for people, because summer naturally pulls us closer to presence. It pulls us closer to sensation and to the body and to life being experienced instead of just managed. And there's something natural in this season that just helps people soften more. Like the evening, they stretch longer and people walk slower. I think music sounds a little bit different also, and the air feels warmer against the skin, of course. And I mean, my windows are always open during the summer, and I think it also just allows us to slow down and have those longer conversations. And human beings are sensory creatures. We remember through texture and through emotion and through moments, and not only through productivity. And summer, it naturally invites more sensory experience. It gives you the ocean swim, salt on your skin, that sunset that makes everyone go quiet for a second. You have late dinners outside, your warm pavement after the sun goes down. You hear people laugh from open balconies, and yeah, just that music that always like in the background when you're walking outside in the evenings. And those moments, they are live. I get goosebumps thinking of them. And can you see that those moments, they're not optimized moments? Those moments, they are ordinary moments that somehow become memories that you carry with you for years. And I think that is why it makes me sad to think about how distracted people are becoming during the very moments they will one day wish they had fully experienced. And I see how people, they are filming their sunsets instead of actually looking at them, or friends, they're sitting together but they are half on their phones, or people walking through beautiful evenings, but they are mentally somewhere else. And myself as well. I'm not saying this with judgment. I think we have all been conditioned into partial attention. But I do think there's something important to wake up to here. Because you can't fully remember a season you were never fully present inside. I think this summer could become incredibly beautiful if we stop consuming our way through it, and if we just stopped interrupting every quiet moment immediately and just allowed ourselves to actually be bored sometimes, actually be present and just feel our lives while the life is happening. Because the older I get, the more I realize that life is not remembered through achievements. It is remembered through moments that were fully felt. And this season, more than any other, really wants to be felt. And I know this is a part where people, they just want that dramatic answer. They want that perfect morning routine, and they want to have a strict dopamine detox, or throwing your phone into the ocean and just disappear into the forest for 3 weeks. That is not what I believe in. I don't think healing our relationship with attention needs to become another form of self-punishment or another extreme performance. I think it is much softer than that. It's much more human. I think it's really about repatterning the nervous system back into presence again. Because if the nervous system has become conditioned to constant stimulation, then presence, it becomes something that you practice, not something that you magically wake up feeling one day. And the biggest shifts, they're often incredibly small. You just try to leave your phone inside your apartment while you go for a short walk. And this is not because phones are evil, but because suddenly your attention comes back to the actual experience. You notice the air, you notice the sounds around you, and the feeling of your body walking. And your thoughts, they start to return. And I also want to challenge you. I know this can feel very uncomfortable, but try to sit outside for 10 minutes without consuming anything, without scrolling, without listening to a podcast, no music. Just sit there. Look around you, watch people, and feel the air. I think people really underestimate how regulating simple moments like that can become. Because in that moment, the nervous system, it gets a moment where nothing is pulling at it. There is no urgency, there's no input, and there's no demand. What is there? Simply presence. And important, eating without scrolling, that is a nervous system practice where you actually taste your food, where you're actually sitting with yourself and you are letting a meal become a moment instead of something you just need to do, like a background noise. And again, I know this sounds so simple and it sounds really boring, but simplicity is often where nervous systems heal. I want you to start noticing when the urge to grab for stimulation comes. Like, start noticing when you urge to grab stimulation and just notice that without judging it, without shaming yourself. Really just notice it. Feel like, oh, my body, it wants distraction right now. And when you do that, that awareness alone, it changes a lot because now you're no longer moving unconsciously. You are creating with choice. And choice is where repatterning begins. And for this summer, I really want to become more available for my own life. I want to be more present and I want to be less distracted. I want to be more able to actually feel the moments that are already here. Because at the end of the day, attention shapes experience. And wherever your attention lives, that is where your life starts being lived too. And I think this is where it becomes bigger than just phones and it becomes bigger than distraction and bigger than screen time. Because eventually this becomes about identity, about the kind of person you want to become and the kind of life you actually want to experiencing while you are living your life. Because I don't think the answer is becoming someone who never touches technology or someone who's perfectly disciplined at all times. That is not what this is about. I think this is about becoming someone who is harder to pull away from their own life, someone whose attention belongs to them, because attention is incredibly valuable. Your attention shapes your experience of reality. So wherever your attention constantly goes, your life starts following it. And I think many people are living in a state of permanent partial attention now. They're always somewhere else. They're half checking in, they're half listening, and they're half experiencing. And over time, that changes the depth of your life experience because depth requires attention and presence requires attention. Even love requires attention. And I think one of the most beautiful things a person can reclaim right now is a deeper attention span. It is the ability to stay with life long enough to actually feel it, to stay in a conversation without needing stimulation, and to sit through a sunset without reaching for the phone to take a photo. And just listen to music without multitasking and eat slowly, walk slowly, and let the moments breathe again. I think there's something incredibly attractive about people who are deeply present. People who you can feel are actually there with you. They're not mentally fragmented the whole time. They're not constantly pulled somewhere else. You feel it immediately in the nervous system. You feel that kind of presence that feels very calming and it's grounding. You feel the safety of it because fully present people, they make life feel more real. When I've been reflecting on a thing that I think is really beautiful right now is that ordinary life, it becomes richer. And you start romanticizing small things naturally. I really love romanticizing my life and looking at the morning light coming into the window. Oh, cold fruit in the summer. Like yesterday, I made this bowl with kiwi and strawberries and just, it was so lovely. And I love walking home at night while the air still feels warm and the sky is not dark yet, like it's still light. And I think we really need to understand that life is actually happening right now and not once everything is optimized, but now. And I think your nervous system deserves to actually be here for it. And I think that is really what I wanted this episode to become. I didn't want it to be another conversation about productivity or another conversation about self-optimization, but more like a reminder to come back to your own little life, to your own attention and your own nervous system and your own moments. Because life moves very quickly, and I think sometimes we don't fully realize how quick quickly seasons pass until they are already gone. Summer especially. One moment it is June and suddenly you're standing in September wondering where it all went. And this summer doesn't need to become another blur your nervous system barely remembers. Because I think so many people are physically present for their lives, but emotionally somewhere else most of the time. So maybe you let this summer become the season where you stop interrupting every empty moment immediately. And yeah, this could be the season where you relearn boredom a little and you get back to the stillness and get back to the presence and just live with more intention. And I don't think presence is about forcing yourself to become some perfectly mindful person all the time. You deserve to actually experience your life while it is happening, not only document it and not only consume your way through it. You deserve to actually experience it. You deserve to feel it and you deserve to remember it. And you do that by living inside it fully enough that your nervous system can say, I was there for my own life. So that's my invitation. Not perfection, but presence. To start noticing where your attention has been living. And without any shame or without extremes, just bring some of it back home to yourself again. Back to the body, back to your senses, back to the people in front of you, and back to the season that you are inside right now. Because this moment and this summer, this version of your life will never exist again in the exact same way. And I think that is what makes presence so precious. So, as you move through the rest of your day, maybe leave your phone inside for a little while, maybe walk slower tonight and watch the sunset without needing to capture it immediately. Watch it first and then take a photo. Just let yourself become a little bit more available for your own life again. Really, some of the most beautiful moments in life, they are much, much quieter than you think. And I just want to thank you for spending this time with me today. Like, truly, truly thank you. It's been so lovely sitting outside. I've been moving around quite a bit. It is so sunny now. I'm still partially in the shadow, but thank you so much. And until next time, as always, stay aligned, stay curious, and most important of all, stay true to yourself.